that was called For Good. So keep that in mind. And I'll try and sing a minute of it so that you can kind of refresh your memory. It's from the musical Wicked. Because I knew you, because I knew you, I have been changed for good. I had this song in my ordination years ago, and it brings tears to my eyes every time I hear it. For what it represented to me was the effect that each person has on another. I had been changed for good by my teaching congregation, by my teaching minister, by this faith of Unitarian Universalism, just by joining it, being accepted by it, believing in its principles. I had been changed for good. I don't know if all of those who attended knew this, knew why I chose that song to be in my ordination, but that's why. That's what I felt, that I had been changed for good. That didn't mean that there hadn't been conflicts, there hadn't been disagreements, there hadn't been hurt along with the joy and laughter and tears, for there had. We had gotten to know each other, and being human, we all have human foibles. I learned to love, and I learned to forgive. For we all have something that needs to be forgiven with others, and we all have others that we need to forgive. Last week, I spoke of how I forgave my parents and what that entailed. It wasn't easy, and for the longest time in my life, I felt that I forgave them. I was somehow losing if I forgave them. Losing what? Losing some kind of contest? Losing a power struggle between them and me? I think when I was younger, I thought that somehow it lessened me to forgive them. Diana Butler Bass has a blog, and she wrote a while back about the Me Too movement, and in it she talked about gratitude, but she also spoke of forgiveness. She wrote of how the Me Too movement affected her and how her church seemed to fail her. But she learned one important thing. In it, she states, "The church taught me that forgiveness and gratitude are intimately connected. Having now written a book on gratitude, I know that research shows this is actually correct. Forgiveness clears our lives of negative emotions, allowing space for positive emotions, like gratitude, to enable healing." She goes on to write, though, that the church equated these negative emotions to Satan, and that's where they lost her. We all have negative emotions. We all have been hurt by others. You can't go through life without experiencing that. And these days, there seems to be so much negativity in the world. How do you push through these negative emotions and move on to gratitude? Next month, our theme is gratitude. And we can explore more of that then, but think about how the two are intertwined and connected. Think about that for the future, for they truly are. Forgiveness and gratitude are essential to healing, and they are indeed qualities of a mature spiritual life. That's what Bass says. So for us to heal, We need to forgive to be able to grow spiritually. On a worldwide basis, that is the hardest part. I was living in Pennsylvania when Jerry Sandusky was arrested and tried for molestation. I was living in Pennsylvania when Bill Cosby was arrested and tried for molestation. Not to mention in the Pittsburgh Diocese in Pennsylvania, the massive cover-up that's been disclosed on the thousands of children molested by priests. Not that it's just Pennsylvania, but I was just living there. I saw a lot more of this there when I was living there. I didn't see a lot of forgiveness nationally for any of them. How do we do that? How do we forgive what seems to be unforgivable? How do we overcome the massive heartache and pain that we see daily, that we see and feel powerless to overcome? It's a struggle to figure that out, and I don't have the answers to that. Andre Dubus III is an American essayist and author, and I have a quote from him. "If I were much wiser and much more patient and had much greater concentration, I could sit in silence in my chair, look out my windows at a green tree and the blue sky, and know that breathing is a gift. That a breath is sufficient for the moment, and that breathing air is breathing God." And I have a poem by Reverend Lynn Unger. She's a Unitarian Universalist minister. "Breathe," said the wind. "How can I breathe at a time like this, when the air is full of the smoke of burning tires, burning lives?" "Just breathe," the wind insisted. "Easy for you to say if the weight of injustice is not wrapped around your throat, cutting off all air. I need you to breathe. I need you to breathe. Don't tell me to be calm when there are so many reasons to be angry, so much cause for despair." "I didn't say to be calm," said the wind. "I said to breathe. We're going to need a lot of air to make this hurricane together." "Breathe," they both say. Breathe. Breathe together. When I read the statistics of the Syrian conflict, I forgot to breathe. We talked about it a bit this morning in Time for All Ages. What wasn't said was that over 6 million people in Syria have been displaced. 69% of the people in Syria live in extreme poverty, defined as under $3 a day. Over 5 million people have fled the country. 13.5 million people require humanitarian aid. They've lived with this conflict since 2011. Over 400,000 people have been killed. And these are all statistics from last year. I can't just breathe through this. I just can't sit back and just breathe. In researching forgiveness this week, it's been extremely difficult to do it without tears. For I have read of sadness, I've read and watched stories of war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes against one another, atrocities that seem unimaginable and unforgivable. I began to feel hopeless, angry, enraged, in pain, saddened beyond measure. My empathy ran amok. I don't even know these people, and yet I feel as if a part of me is damaged. If I feel this way, what must they feel like? There is a video on YouTube called Forgiving ISIS, and a priest is interviewed, Father Douglas, and he describes what his life and his people's lives has been like lately in northern Iraq. It is not just the time for forgiveness, he says. It is not the time for words. It is the time for work. He asks God to not let this opportunity go by. Even after ISIS blew up his church, he got shot with a bullet still in his leg. He was kidnapped, and he said they did this all in the name of Allah. And he said, I had to forgive them, to let the grace fall down from generation to generation so that the pain and the hate would not close them from the grace of God. He said it doesn't matter what has happened to our generation, but that we have to take care of our kids. If we don't take care of our kids now, the next generation of ISIS will be from our side. I had to gasp at that. How profound was that thought? He decided to forgive so that he could model to the children that there was a better way. Aid workers in the video described children seeing their entire families killed. Children with no shoes or coats for the winter, no homes to go to. Aid workers were there to help prepare them for the cold winter that was coming. They brought them coats. And then Father Douglas said, I believe one day that the children of the next generation may never excuse us, but they will never forget the people who stand and help us. He had to forgive to move on. But he also forgave as a role model so the children would see how to live their lives when they grew up. I could then see how taking a breath would help me forgive. And as I spoke of meditation last week, I discovered that meditation could actually help to make a difference in the world and create forgiveness and create peace. There is a wonderful article written by a Vietnam vet, William T. Hathaway, that writes about his experiences with meditation and how it freed him from his flashbacks from that terrible war. And in this article, he documents many studies of how when large groups of people meditate for hours, it causes violence and crime to decrease in measurable and significant amounts. William T. Hathaway was a Special Forces combat veteran and states that meditation changed his life. He lives in Germany now and writes, and he states, my military experience convinced me that to prevent war, we need to raise human consciousness. A look at the history of revolutions shows that switching economic and political systems isn't enough. The same aggressive personality types take over and start another army. We have to change the basic unit, the individual. He sees spirituality as essential to bringing about a more peaceful world, that we can't accomplish that without a spiritual component. It's fascinating to read some of the studies that he cites. In one, the Maharishi created a center in India for a while where 7,000 meditators gathered to meditate for hours. He had a private donor support this effort for 2 years, and during this time period, the Cold War ended, the Berlin Wall fell, Soviet citizens gained freedom, apartheid came to South Africa, and environmental agreements were signed that even saved the ozone layer. When the donor ran out of money, they couldn't fund this project any longer and tried to get nations interested. They had facts and statistics, some created by the RAND Corporation, that showed significant changes in violence, some as high as 72% in a drop in terrorism when these 7,000 meditators meditated. Lebanon showed a 71% drop in war deaths during the meditation, a 68% decrease in injuries, a 48% decrease in combat incidents, and an increase in cooperation of 66%. But there was not a single country or politician that believed in this enough to say, yes, I'll fund that, even with all of these facts and statistics. So the project died. What an amazing concept. Can that be the answer? That all of these people together affected the world. This gives me hope. Hope that there can be forgiveness. Hope that we can change how the world is being right now. Meditation is breathing. Breathing can lead to forgiving. Breathing can lead to peace. There is a key here for us, a key that could open the door so that the next generation won't have to endure what we have wrought. Again, reading the blog of Diana Butler Bass, she relates a time where she couldn't forgive her uncle for what he had done to her as a child. And this anger and fear and resentment built up in her until a friend said, "Your life is like a garden, and it is not well tended. You need to grow your garden." I read that and thought, that is what forgiveness is. It is the water that grows the garden inside of us. It is the nurturing of our tender shoots inside that can grow when cared for, when watered, when allowed to see the sun. If that's what forgiveness can do for us inside ourselves, can it also induce growing of other people's gardens inside of themselves? Maybe those 7,000 meditators were onto something. Meditation will bring us to a peaceful place, which allows us to forgive even those heinous crimes and actions we deem unforgivable. For if we don't forgive, as Father Douglas said, our children will go to the other side. We need to create a world where forgiveness is not a bad word. Where forgiveness is not forgetting or condoning, but a way of being, so that the next generation won't fall into tribalism, won't see each other as the other, won't continue the hate and warfare and negative feelings that prolong this wrong path we might be going down. We are all connected. Even our principles show that. We respect the interconnectedness that exists among every living being on this planet. We hold dear the inherent worth and dignity of every living person. There are stories all over the world of people forgiving what we might think is unforgivable. When they have forgiven, they have found a new life, new ways of being. They have grown their gardens inside of themselves. They have been changed for good. We have the capacity to change for good. Because I knew you. Because I knew you. I have been changed for good. We can go out into the world and be that change for good. We have the capacity to change for good when we forgive. May it be so. Blessed be.